Welcome back to Deep Blue Tales, where we explore the most incredible true stories from the depths of our oceans. Today's story will remind you that beneath the waves, a single act of courage can change everything. Before we dive in, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community of ocean lovers from around the world. Also, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our tales travel. And if this story moves you, give it a like and share it with someone who needs to witness the ocean's power to reveal our humanity. 42 nautical miles off the coast of San Diego, California, a recreational diver was about to make a decision that would trigger an international military response and rewrite protocols for search and rescue operations across 3 navies. His name was David Chen, and at 37 years old he was an electrical engineer who lived for weekends. Weekends meant leaving behind the fluorescent-lit cubicle where he designed circuit boards for medical devices and descending into the blue world where he truly felt alive. His small apartment in Chula Vista was sparse: second-hand furniture, a mattress on the floor, walls decorated with underwater photographs he'd taken himself. But his diving equipment was top of the line. Every spare dollar went into his gear, his certifications, his boat fuel. David was Chinese-American, first generation, his parents having immigrated from Shanghai when he was 3 years old. His father worked in a restaurant kitchen for 40 years. His mother cleaned houses. They had sacrificed everything so David could go to engineering school, could have the stable, respectable career they'd never had. They didn't understand his obsession with diving. His mother worried constantly. His father thought it was a waste of time and money, but David couldn't explain to them what the ocean meant to him. How the weight of the water pressing on him felt like an embrace. How the silence at depth was the only place his anxious mind ever truly quieted. How down there, alone in the blue, he felt connected to something vast and ancient and infinitely larger than himself. It was Saturday, August 17th, 2019. David had loaded his gear into his 19-foot Boston whaler before dawn, driving down to Harbor Island while the city still slept. The marine forecast was perfect. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas. He was planning a deep dive today, down to 120 feet to explore a rocky reef he'd read about on the diving forums. Solo diving. Risky, but David was meticulous. He had redundant systems for everything: 2 computers, 2 lights, 2 cutting tools, and most importantly, a pony bottle, an emergency backup air supply strapped to his main tank that could give him enough air to make a safe ascent if his primary regulator failed. By 7:30, David had motored out to his dive site, using his GPS to find the exact coordinates. The Pacific stretched endlessly around him, deep blue fading to lighter turquoise closer to his boat. Catalina Island was visible as a hazy silhouette on the western horizon. The water was glass calm, unusual for this far offshore. A good omen. He went through his pre-dive checks with practiced precision. Tank pressure, full at 3,000 psi. Regulator, breathing smoothly. Buoyancy compensator, inflating and deflating properly. Pony bottle, full at 1,200 psi, enough for maybe 15 minutes at depth in an emergency, more if he conserved it. Dive computer, functioning, set to his profile. He was planning for 20 minutes of bottom time at 120 feet, which would require safety stops at 20 feet for 3 minutes and 15 feet for 5 minutes on the ascent. David geared up, feeling the familiar weight of the equipment settle onto his back, about 70 pounds of tanks, regulators, weights, and buoyancy control. He sat on the edge of his boat, mask in place, regulator in mouth, and rolled backward into the Pacific. The water was cool, 68 degrees, but his 7mm wetsuit kept him comfortable. He hung at the surface for a moment, doing his final checks, then deflated his BCD and began his descent. The reef appeared below him like a submerged cathedral. Massive boulders covered in purple hydrocoral and strawberry anemones rose from the sandy bottom. Schools of senorita fish swirled in golden clouds. A California sea lion shot past him, graceful as a dancer. David felt his heart rate slow, felt that familiar peace settle over him. He was 17 minutes into his dive, photographing a massive sheephead fish, when he noticed something that didn't belong. Bubbles, but not from him. A stream of bubbles rising from deeper water, beyond the reef, coming from the direction of the drop-off where the bottom fell away to 200 feet or more. David's training kicked in immediately. Bubbles meant another diver, and bubbles coming from that direction, at this site that he'd never seen anyone else dive, meant something was probably wrong. He swam toward the source, his fins propelling him over the reef and toward the drop-off. That's when he saw him. A diver, maybe 70 feet below David's position, at nearly 190 feet deep. Way too deep for recreational diving. The diver was moving erratically, jerking in the water, and even from this distance, David could see the panic in his movements. David checked his computer. He was at 123 feet. Going deeper would be dangerous, cutting into his no decompression time, potentially requiring longer safety stops. But something was very wrong with that diver. He made the decision in seconds. He dumped air from his BCD and descended. As David approached, the situation became horrifyingly clear. The diver, a man probably in his 40s wearing rental-quality gear, was in full panic. His eyes were wild behind his mask, his arms were flailing, and worst of all, he was making the universal hand signal for out of air, bringing his hand across his throat in a slashing motion again and again. David reached him at 187 feet. His own computer was beeping warnings at him. The nitrogen narcosis at this depth made everything feel slightly dreamy, slightly disconnected. He fought to stay focused. The panicked diver grabbed David immediately, clawing at him, trying to rip the regulator from David's mouth. David had trained for this. He pushed the man away firmly, established eye contact, and made the hand signal. Down, calm down, I will help you. Then David did something that would have made his instructors proud and terrified. He reached for his pony bottle, his emergency backup, his safety net, his way home if anything went wrong, and offered its regulator to the stranger. The man grabbed it desperately, purged it to clear the water, and took a huge, gasping breath, then another. His eyes were still panicked, but at least he was breathing. David checked his own air. He'd been down for 18 minutes. His main tank read 1 through 400 psi, enough to get him to the surface with proper decompression stops, but not a lot of margin for error. The pony bottle he'd just given to the stranger had maybe 12 minutes of air at this depth, less with the man breathing so hard. They needed to ascend, now. David grabbed the man's BCD and began adding air to it, starting their ascent. The key was to go slow. Too fast and they'd both get decompression sickness, nitrogen bubbles forming in their blood and tissues, potentially causing paralysis, death. Too slow, and they'd run out of air. They rose together, David maintaining a firm grip on the stranger, monitoring both their depth and their air. At 100 feet, David checked his main tank. 1 to 100 psi. Not good. They were both breathing hard, burning through air faster than normal. At 80 feet, the stranger's eyes suddenly went wide with a different kind of terror. He pulled the pony bottle regulator from his mouth and showed it to David. Empty. The pony bottle was out of air. They were still 80 feet below the surface. David had maybe 900 psi left in his main tank. Under normal circumstances, that would be enough. But these weren't normal circumstances. They were both breathing hard. And now David had to share his primary air supply. This was the moment David had to make the choice. He could push the stranger away, ascend alone, save himself. He had enough air for one person maybe, or he could attempt buddy breathing, the old technique of passing a single regulator back and forth between two divers, a skill so dangerous most agencies had stopped teaching it years ago. David looked into the stranger's eyes and saw raw terror. Saw a man who was going to die in the next few minutes unless David helped him. Saw someone's husband, father, son. He made his decision. He pulled his own regulator from his mouth and handed it to the stranger. What followed was a slow-motion dance with death. 3 breaths for the stranger, then David would take the regulator back for 3 breaths of his own. Purge it to clear water. Breathe. Pass it back. Again and again, ascending at 15 feet per minute, the slowest they could manage without running out of air completely. At 60 feet, David's tank pressure dropped to 500 psi. Critical. His computer was screaming at him about decompression requirements. At 40 feet, 300 psi. They should have stopped here for a safety break. No time. Keep ascending. Pass the regulator. Breathe. Pass it back. At 30 feet, David felt the regulator give that telltale resistance that meant his tank was nearly empty. He took one last full breath and handed the regulator to the stranger. 20 feet. The surface visible above them, shimmering and so close but still impossibly far. The stranger took a breath and passed the regulator back. David put it in his mouth and sucked. Nothing. Empty. The tank was completely out of air. David's lungs burned. His vision started to tunnel. Every instinct in his body screamed to bolt for the surface, but he knew that would kill him. An embolism as the air in his lungs expanded during a rapid ascent, his blood literally boiling with nitrogen. He handed the empty regulator back to the stranger one last time, hoping the man would understand they were both out of options. Then David did the hardest thing he'd ever done. He continued ascending slowly, properly, even as his oxygen-starved brain started to shut down. 15 feet. His vision narrowed to a pinpoint. His arms and legs felt like lead. He wasn't sure he was still ascending, or if he was sinking. 10 feet. Blackness crept in from the edges. Was he still swimming? He couldn't tell. 5 feet. He could see the hull of his boat, or was that a hallucination? And then his head broke the surface. David gasped, choked, gasped again, pulling air into his starving lungs in huge, racking breaths. Beside him, the stranger surfaced, still breathing from the empty regulator, then realized he was in the air and ripped it from his mouth, crying and coughing and gasping. They clung to each other in the water, both trembling, both crying, both alive by a margin measured in seconds. "Thank you," the stranger choked out between gasps. "Thank you. You saved my life. You gave me your air. You could have died." David couldn't speak yet. His brain was still catching up to the fact that he'd survived, that they'd both survived. It took 10 minutes before they had the strength to climb into David's boat. The stranger, his name was Marcus, he finally managed to say. Marcus Webb, a tourist from Ohio on his 3rd dive ever, who'd gone too deep following a sea turtle and panicked when he realized his rental tank was low, collapsed onto the deck, still shaking. David's hands trembled as he started the engine. They needed to get to shore. They'd ascended too fast, skipped safety stops. Decompression sickness could still hit them. They needed medical evaluation, possibly a hyperbaric chamber. He'd just turned the boat toward shore when he heard it. A sound that made no sense out here. 42 nautical miles from land in empty ocean. A helicopter. Close, very close. David looked up and saw it approaching from the north. A Navy MH-60S Seahawk, the red cross clearly visible on its side. A rescue helicopter. "What the hell?" David whispered. The helicopter circled once, then hovered directly above them. A voice crackled over a loudspeaker. "This is U.S. Navy Rescue. Remain in your vessel. Medical personnel are being deployed." A rescue swimmer dropped into the water, swam to their boat, and climbed aboard in full gear. He was young, maybe 25, powerfully built, and all business. "How many divers? Any injuries? Did you surface rapidly?" The questions came fast. David answered as best he could, still confused about how a Navy helicopter had found them so quickly. The rescue swimmer examined them both, checking pupils, asking about numbness or tingling, signs of decompression sickness. Then he spoke into his radio. 2 divers recovered, both conscious and responsive. Possible DCS from emergency ascent. Recommend immediate transport to hyperbaric facility. "Wait," David said. "How did you know we were here?" "I didn't send a distress call. My radio's not even on." The rescue swimmer gave him a strange look. "Sir, we've been searching for Mr. Webb for 3 hours. His dive boat reported him missing at 0830. We've got 10 ships and 4 aircraft in a search grid covering 200 square miles." David and Marcus looked at each other in shock. 10 ships, Marcus whispered. The rescue swimmer nodded. "Wait until you see." The helicopter couldn't land, but it maintained position while directing David to motor south. As he did, the ocean around them transformed. Ships appeared on the horizon. Big ships, grey ships, military ships. First, a destroyer appeared to their east, its distinctive profile cutting through the water. Then another to their west. Then a frigate to the south. And more. David counted them as they came into view, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. USS Michael Murphy, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. USS Gabriel Giffords, a littoral combat ship. USS Essex, an amphibious assault ship massive enough to carry helicopters and landing craft. 3 smaller patrol boats, 2 Coast Guard cutters, even a Navy rescue and salvage ship, the USNS Safeguard, bristling with diving equipment. 10 ships, 10 military vessels surrounding this patch of ocean, all searching for one missing diver. And they'd found him because David had shared his last breath with a stranger. The USS Michael Murphy pulled alongside David's small Boston whaler, and suddenly his 19-foot recreational boat looked like a child's toy next to the 509-foot destroyer. Sailors lined the rails looking down at them. A rigid hull inflatable boat was lowered, and within minutes David and Marcus were transferred aboard the destroyer. They were taken immediately to the ship's medical bay, where a Navy physician and 2 corpsmen were waiting. The doctor, a commander named Sarah Harrison, was in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and efficient movements. "Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you questions while we examine you. Any numbness, tingling, joint pain, difficulty breathing?" Her hands were already checking their pulses, their pupils, their reflexes. Both David and Marcus reported feeling okay, just exhausted. But Commander Harrison wasn't taking chances. "You," she pointed at Marcus, "went to 190 feet and made an emergency ascent with missed decompression stops. You," pointing at David, "went deeper than planned, shared air in a buddy-breathing emergency, and surfaced with essentially no air in your system. You're both at high risk for decompression sickness." She spoke into a radio. "This is Harrison. I need immediate helicopter transport for 2 divers to UC San Diego Medical Center, hyperbaric facility. Potential DCS, emergency ascent from depth exceeding 180 feet. "Wait," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Is this all because of me? 10 ships, all these people, I went on a charter dive boat this morning. Budget divers out of Mission Bay. I told them I was certified. I am, barely. Open water. But I wanted to see the deep reef, and I kept going down. And then my air ran low and I panicked and—" "Mr. Webb," Commander Harrison interrupted gently, "when you didn't return to your charter boat, the captain called the Coast Guard at 08:30. That triggered a multi-agency search and rescue operation. The Coast Guard coordinates with us for large-scale oceanic searches. We had ships conducting exercises 80 miles north. We diverted immediately." She looked at David. "And you saved his life. The rescue swimmer's report says you gave him your emergency air supply and then shared your primary regulator using buddy breathing. Do you understand how dangerous that was? How easily you both could have drowned?" David nodded slowly. "I know, but I couldn't leave him." Commander Harrison's expression softened slightly. "No, I suppose you couldn't. That decision, Mr. Chen, is why Mr. Webb is alive. Buddy breathing has an 8% involvement rate in fatal diving accidents. It's incredibly risky. But you did it correctly. You stayed calm. You controlled the ascent. You both survived." Within 20 minutes, they were loaded onto the helicopter and flown to UC San Diego Medical Center, where one of the West Coast's most advanced hyperbaric facilities waited. The chamber was a massive steel cylinder, large enough to hold multiple patients, with viewports and communication systems built in. David and Marcus were sealed inside together, still in their wetsuits, as the chamber pressure increased to simulate going back underwater. 8 times normal atmospheric pressure, equivalent to 60 feet of seawater depth. They breathed pure oxygen through masks, the hyperbaric treatment designed to shrink any nitrogen bubbles that might have formed in their blood and tissues, preventing the joint pain, paralysis, or neurological damage that decompression sickness could cause. The treatment lasted 4.5 hours. Through the viewport, David could see doctors and technicians monitoring their vital signs, adjusting the chamber's pressure according to U.S. Navy Treatment Table 6, the standard protocol for decompression illness. Inside the chamber, Marcus finally spoke. "I need to tell you what happened. Why I was down so deep." David turned to look at him, both of them still wearing oxygen masks, their voices slightly distorted by the pressure. "I'm not a diver," Marcus said quietly. "I got certified 3 months ago on vacation in Cozumel. Barely passed. My wife didn't want me to do it. Said I was too old, too out of shape, too reckless. But I wanted to prove something. That I could still have adventures. That I wasn't just an accountant from Ohio who'd never done anything interesting." He paused, tears forming in his eyes. So this weekend, on a business trip to San Diego, I booked a dive, lied about my experience level, rented gear, and when we got to the reef I saw this huge sea turtle swimming down into the blue and I just followed it. Didn't check my depth, didn't check my air, just kept going deeper, thinking I was finally living. Marcus wiped his eyes. And then I looked at my gauge and saw I was at 190 and had 500 psi left, and I panicked completely. Started breathing even faster. The dive master was way above me. I was alone, and I knew I was going to die down there because I'd been an idiot. He looked directly at David. And then you appeared, like an angel or something, and you gave me your air. You gave me your emergency backup, the thing that was supposed to save your life, and you gave it to me, a complete stranger who was only in danger because of his own stupidity. David was quiet for a moment, then he said, "My parents don't understand why I dive. They think it's selfish, dangerous, a waste of the opportunities they gave me. And maybe it is. But down there today when I saw you, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I just knew that if I didn't help, you would die, and I couldn't live with that." "You almost died for me," Marcus whispered. "But we didn't die," David said. "We're here. We're okay. And maybe that's the whole point." They were released from the hyperbaric chamber 6 hours later, monitored for another 4 hours, and then cleared with no signs of decompression sickness. Commander Harrison called it a miracle. The hyperbaric specialist called it exceptional luck. David called it borrowed time and a second chance. But the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, David woke up in the hospital room they'd kept him in overnight for observation to find 2 men in Navy uniforms standing at his door. One was a captain, the other a commander with an armful of folders. "Mr. Chen, I'm Captain James Reyes, U.S. Pacific Fleet Search and Rescue Coordination. This is Commander Michael Torres, Fleet Diving Operations. May we have a few minutes?" David sat up, confused. "Am I in trouble?" Captain Reyes smiled. "No, Mr. Chen, quite the opposite. We're here because what you did yesterday is being reviewed as a case study for our rescue diver training program." He pulled out a tablet, showing a map with overlaid search grids. "When Mr. Webb was reported missing at 08:30, we initiated a standard search pattern. 10 ships, 4 aircraft covering a 200-square-mile area. We were working blind. No last known position, no distress beacon, just a general area where his charter boat had been diving." Commander Torres took over. "Navy search and rescue protocols for missing divers involve expanding square searches and aircraft sweeps. We'd been searching for 3 hours with no success. Statistically, after 3 hours in open ocean, survival rates drop below 30%. We were starting to prepare for a recovery operation rather than a rescue. Then at 11:05, one of our helicopters picked up your boat on routine sweep," Captain Reyes continued. "They saw 2 people on deck, recognized diving gear, and decided to investigate. When they saw Mr. Webb, we realized we'd found our missing diver, alive, against all odds." He leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, we reviewed the rescue swimmer's report and interviewed Mr. Webb. You performed a successful buddy-breathing emergency ascent from depth with a panicked, inexperienced diver. That's one of the most difficult rescue scenarios in diving. Our Navy divers train for months to do that successfully, and even then, it has a high failure rate." "I didn't really think about it," David said. "I just did what I was trained to do." "Exactly," Commander Torres said. "And that's what we want to understand. You're a recreational diver, advanced open water, rescue diver certified. We checked. No military training, no professional experience. Yet you executed a textbook emergency rescue under conditions that would challenge even experienced rescue divers." Captain Reyes pulled out a document. "The Navy is conducting a review of civilian diving training standards and rescue protocols. Your actions yesterday demonstrated that proper training and calm decision-making can overcome even extremely dangerous situations. We'd like your permission to use your case, anonymously if you prefer, in our training materials." David was speechless. My case? I just shared my air. You saved a man's life while risking your own," Commander Torres said. "You maintained situational awareness at depth with nitrogen narcosis affecting your judgment. You controlled a panicked diver. You managed air consumption for 2 people with insufficient supply. You executed a controlled ascent from depth with decompression considerations, And you both survived without injury. That's not just anything, Mr. Chen. That's exceptional. Over the next week, David's life transformed in ways he never imagined. The story hit the media. Civilian diver's heroic rescue triggers massive Navy response. Man shares last breath with stranger, saves life. His parents called, crying. His father said, "I was wrong about the diving. I understand now." His mother said, "You saved someone's son, someone's husband. You are my hero." Marcus Webb's wife flew to San Diego and hugged David for 5 minutes straight, sobbing, thanking him for bringing her husband home. Marcus and David exchanged phone numbers, email addresses, promises to stay in touch. But the most surprising contact came from the diving community itself. Diving instructors reached out, asking David to speak at conferences. Equipment manufacturers sent him free gear. Diving magazines wanted interviews. The Professional Association of Diving Instructors, PADI, asked him to contribute to their rescue diver curriculum update. 3 months later, David stood in front of 200 people at the DEMA Diving Trade Show in Orlando, Florida, telling his story. In the audience were Navy rescue divers, commercial diving instructors, recreational diving enthusiasts, and safety equipment manufacturers. "I want to be clear about something," David told them. "What I did was dangerous. Buddy breathing is risky, solo diving is risky. Going deeper to help someone when you're already at depth is risky. I'm not advocating that anyone take the risks I took." He paused, looking out at the audience. "But I am advocating for training, for being prepared, for staying calm. Because when I saw Marcus struggling at 190 feet, I had a choice. I could have turned away. I could have surfaced and called for help. And Marcus would have died while I was doing that. Training gave me the skills to help, but something else gave me the will. The understanding that beneath the surface, we're all just humans in an environment we're not designed for. We're all vulnerable. And if we don't look out for each other down there, who will?" The audience stood and applauded, but David was looking at someone in the third row. Marcus Webb, who had flown in from Ohio to watch David speak, was crying again. After the presentation, Captain Reyes approached David. "The Navy is updating its search and rescue training protocols based partially on your case. We're emphasizing the importance of coordinating with civilian divers, improving our search patterns, and reducing response times. Your actions that day didn't just save one life, Mr. Chen. They're helping us save future lives." 6 months after the rescue, David received a package. Inside was a plaque from the Pacific Fleet, commending him for exceptional bravery and skill in the performance of a civilian rescue operation at sea. Also in the box was a handwritten letter from the commander of Naval Surface Forces Pacific. But the item David treasured most was a photograph. It showed 10 Navy ships arranged in formation, photographed from a helicopter. Written on the back in Marcus's handwriting, "This is what your courage looks like. Thank you for my life." David mounted it on his wall, right next to his diving certifications. He still dives every weekend, still goes to the same spots off San Diego, but now he carries 2 pony bottles instead of 1. And he's training for his Dive Master certification, working toward becoming a rescue diving instructor. Because that day at 187 feet, when he handed his last breath to a stranger, David learned something that changed him forever. The ocean doesn't care about our plans, our fears, or our carefully calculated risks. It only cares about what we do when everything goes wrong. And in those moments, the choice to act with courage and compassion isn't just about saving someone else. It's about saving yourself, saving your humanity, your integrity, your answer to the question every person faces eventually. What would I do if someone's life depended on me? David knows his answer now, and 10 Navy ships bore witness to it. What can we learn from David's story? It teaches us that heroism isn't about seeking glory or recognition. It's about making the hardest choice in the most desperate moment and living with the consequences. David gave his emergency air supply, his safety net, his way home, to a stranger who had made fatal mistakes. He risked his own survival for someone he'd never met and might never see again. But here's the deeper truth. The ocean reveals who we really are. At 187 feet down, with nitrogen narcosis affecting judgment and seconds to make a decision, David's character showed through. Training gave him the skills, but compassion gave him the will. Those 10 Navy ships that surrounded his boat weren't just searching for a missing diver. They represented humanity's commitment to the principle that no one should die alone in the water if we have the power to prevent it. Every time we enter the ocean, whether we're divers, swimmers, surfers, or sailors, we're entering a realm where we depend on each other for survival. David's choice to share his last breath reminds us that we're all connected beneath the waves. The person struggling next to you could be someone who made a mistake, someone who panicked, someone who was unprepared, but they're still someone's son, daughter, parent, friend. They still deserve a chance. If this story inspired you, let us know in the comments how you would prepare yourself to help someone in an emergency situation. Subscribe for more incredible tales that remind us of our shared humanity, and share this with someone who needs to remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. Till next time, keep exploring the blue and look out for each other down there.